and today my guest is Cullan Ball. Our key topic for today's chat will be why physios could benefit from thinking more like a strength and conditioning coach. And we'll be discussing not only that topic, but also Cullan's extensive background in elite sport. So whether you're a high performance coach or manager, or you're a sports physiotherapist, or for developing footballers tuning in, make sure to hang around for the whole chat. And if you've got any questions, you can hit us up in the comment section below. But thanks for jumping on, Colin.
Jack, no problems, mate. Thanks for having me.
For those that aren't aware of your work, mate, do you mind providing a background of your work experience, but also academic side and the different sporting clubs that you've done, and then we'll start to get into the chat. But yeah, it'd be good to get a background.
Yeah, no problems, mate. I studied at the University of Sydney way back. I think I probably started 19. Seems like an absolute eternity ago now. Finished in 94. Worked in clinics mainly around Sydney. I had my own practice for quite a while. For family reasons, moved down to Melbourne. I think it was end of 2003, and worked down there with Craig Christie at Sydney South Physiotherapy. And part of the job there working with Craig was to clubs. So spent 8 seasons working in the VFL, a few of those with the Carlton Footy Club.
Yep.
And I took over the lead role there whilst in, I think, 2012, made sport and worked at the Bombers for a while, Essendon, and Super Rugby at the Melbourne Rebels, which was fantastic experience. Years there, and then made the decision to come back to Sydney. I think it was the start of 2019, maybe. Came back to Sydney, worked at the Giants, and then I did a little stint in rugby league last year with the Sharks, and now working New Wanderers in A-League, as they call it, soccer, or they call it football, of course, but that doesn't go down too well there. So I don't know what we call it. What do you reckon, Jack?
Soccer, probably, for the listeners. I reckon, there'd probably be more. I can only assume, well, the Australian listeners anyway, although there are a few that tune in around the world, so probably it is the world game.
Yeah.
But we're in Australia, so we'll call it soccer's fair.
They keep reminding me it's the world game. I think we'll go with soccer. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, so that work experience thus far. So quite a bit of time in clinic. I don't know what that works out to be, maybe 15 in clinic, and then a decent chunk of time working in full-time professionals. It's been a good mix.
Yeah, great mix, mate. Like we're talking about off air, you've pretty much any team ball sport you've been involved in. Along that journey, who have been some strong influences or mentors, if you like, that have sort of helped shape your philosophy and the way you go about it?
Yeah, I've already mentioned Craig, so to me, and he's probably one of the best diagnostic physios that I'm. He's a really smart guy, astute. His skills are fantastic. So I learned a lot working with just about being systematic and methodical in and then obviously there was a lot of treatment-based work done there as well. Craig has been a big influence on me. And once I started working in full-time sport, I worked with Maya Jones. Came over from the UK and took the lead physio role at the Bombers. So I've done underneath Jonesy. Not the most comfortable place to work because he's a big fella, but learned a lot from Jonesy about how to integrate strength and conditioning into professional sport, and also how to in that environment, because it is very different to semi-professional. They're probably the two biggest influences that I've other people. My wife would call them expanders. She woo stuff. So people like Adam Meekins, I think from a physio perspective, really enjoy his approach to stuff, and he's pretty polarizing. These little bits on Instagram about trying to keep it real. And then outside of the physio world, I've done a little bit of study and work. Someone like Lane Norton has been quite influential in that area of my continuing education. And the no frills sort of guy, reads a lot of research. He's got a lot of practical experience. I read a lot of his stuff, and then even some pretty inspirational guy about taking control of your own will, taking control of your own health, really. So first thought, they're probably the main people that I take inspiration from.
Yeah. And what about highlights that spring front of mind, and moments that you're proud to be a part of?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the thing that really springs to mind was premiership at Port Melbourne, which was a special year, and then won the grand final. And it had been a long time since it was a pretty emotional time for the club. From a perspective, it was probably one of the easiest years to spend in sport, because we didn't have many injuries. The team played well, and they were a really special bunch of blokes. So from a sporting perspective, that's the thing that really, that year 2011 was a good year. And then in professional, it's a big day. So I'm a Collingwood fan, so working at the Bombers, to being a part of Anzac Day was pretty special for 3 or 4 times. So yeah, you couldn't lose, right? If the Bombers won, it was a good day, and if the Pies won, well, it wasn't such a bad day either. So
yeah,
it was good. But their grand final was pretty disappointing day, really, with the Giants. So it was good to be a part of it. And the lead up to that was stressful, I suppose. Around a couple of blokes that we had to try and get up for the gates, but the day didn't go well for us.
And what about on the flip side, mate? Challenges that you've faced, no doubt, with elite sport and the background you've got, there'd be a fair few challenges that you face. But yeah, I guess some of the most significant ones, and what have you sort of learned from them, or how have you grown from them, either personally or professionally?
Yeah. Look, this is always a challenge from coaches to players. But if you're good at reading people and connecting with people, it's not such a bad thing. Communicate in a way to different people that they respond to. So you've got to communicate information and approach different people. But I think the biggest challenge working in professional sport, players really love to outsource their wellness, and physiotherapy. It's a profession that does a lot of really focusing on pain modulation and symptoms, and some people might call them party tricks, right? Where it's not hard to change their pain, and the perception of the profession is that we're there to make people, and that's a huge challenge, because I'm not convinced that we all feel better and to take their pain away. So that's been because of people's expectations of what the profession should provide players with the way that they're brought through, right? That's what they're used to and what they expect. So to try and change some of those mindsets can be really challenging, and how fast you want to try and change it, or whether you've got the mandate to change it within the club, I suppose, and that's really.
Yeah. It's good. It's probably a good segue for our key topic. I guess an open-ended question: How did you come up with the topic, and why you're passionate about why physiotherapists could benefit from thinking more like an S&C?
Yeah, well, I'm for a long time, and I've been a physio for a while now, and I've done seen a lot of approaches and used a lot of approaches myself, and it probably wasn't made the jump into full-time professional sport that you really get exposed to strength and conditioning. During my time at Port Melbourne, like, the boys sort of did some weights. The boys worked full-time. They'd come to training, might do a few beach. Gym was pretty rudimentary. It's like most hotel gyms, really. There wasn't much there. Weights program or strength and conditioning program. So they just train, and then you make the jump into professional sport, and obviously working, seeing his approach to how important strength and conditioning was, changed the way that I looked at things. I'd never really thought made sense and worked well all the time, therapy perspective, and that's where physio trained largely in manual therapy and how to modify people's pain. So to come in and try and work in a physio really is quite a small part of it. To understand that space and then be able to work with the different departments within a club was a catalyst for going more down a strength and conditioning path rather than therapy path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for those that haven't made that shift yet, and you've seen both sides, what are some of the benefits, do you think, when you do start to take on that approach? But also, what are some things to be mindful of, I guess, when you starting to dabble with focusing on more the strength and conditioning side, I guess, in developing robust athletes?
Yeah, I think if you're trying to develop robust athletes, it's counter dependent on something. And players are really funny creatures. They, they like their routines and they like to do things a certain way, and that somewhat. And I've been around at a few different clubs and meet for the first time all players that come to a club that you're at who have their routine 30 minutes of physio before they train. And you think, how have they got to this point with number one? That's not a positive in my mind. And I guess maybe it's a little bit of job justification and the feeling that they need to change something. Somebody comes with something, some discomfort, to jump in and intervene and try and fix that. But it's just not or beneficial in developing robust athletes, because I'm not convinced that, apart from making short-term changes to people's pain, helps much in the long term. I think long-lasting, results in people's function and pain, improvements in pain. I just think there's better ways to go around that, and to develop someone who's strong mentally.
Yeah, no, well said, mate, and thanks for sharing. For, I guess, the physiotherapists listening in, that perhaps are aware, maybe they have gone to a new club and there's a few athletes that are in that boat. What have you found have been some effective ways of communicating to try and shift that towards self-practice or getting them their own routine down pat to prepare themselves to train rather than relying on treatment?
Well, it depends how big they are, number one, and how aggressive they are. So what you're working in. Look, I think a lot of it depends on your man. By that is, if it depends what the program is trying to drive.
Mm-hmm.
Big on passive treatment, and that'll be a really difficult conversation if you're presenting a different philosophy than the rest of are pushing. Then that's a pretty difficult conversation. If the club's deciding that they want to go less down the path, then it's a little bit easier. And I've been at places where that's the upfront and brutal, and sometimes, so I think if you're in the right environment and if that's what he's looking for, you can explain it and educate the player. One of the little things that I found was actually if you're sort of stuck in the middle, some stuff before treatment, so you're making it an active process. So he can get his hamstring rubbed for 20 minutes before training. You might make them do something like so. If they've got a treatment slot at 8 o'clock, whatever time it is, up at 7:40, and then you're going to do 15 minutes of rolling and mobility and work, and get them to do that before they come to you for their treatment slot. And it works pretty well. It's pretty effective because a lot of the times they go, "I've done that. I'm pretty good."
Yeah.
So if you're struggling, if someone's really adamant that they want stuff, sometimes I've sat down with players and gone, "Look, man, you want 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's one of me or however many you've got in your department, depending on your staffing, and there's 4. If everybody wants this, I just can't do it. So can we map out where, maybe before training once or twice, you get a session, and then if there's a treat, one of those, and then gradually try to whittle down their dependence on manual, and that's worked pretty successfully as well. And I think they get to the point where they go, it doesn't give me a lot of long-term relief. It could just be that I'm not a way to make long-term relief in people. I don't know. And then, if you don't want to do that, you can just tell them that there's no treat them. I have done that.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a bit more confident, that is also effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you for sharing, mate. And what are some common misconceptions, do you think, with regards to injury mitigation when developing athletes?
We're talking about manual therapy. So, they can out-treat injuries. It's just my opinion. Like, I could be completely wrong, of course. And it may well up, which I totally get, but it's my experience and my opinion. But treatment or manual therapy in general doesn't have a great deal of injuries in my mind. Now, some guys need treatment. Like I do manual therapy, and I think for the right guy at the right time, it can be beneficial in conjunction as well. But I think we centers, and you think the biggest stimulus these blokes get is out on the field. and their lifestyle. So how they sleep, how they eat, free techniques, their mental state. Like they're the trying to mitigate injury, and that's difficult. I really feel for performance, and it is because it's a difficult job because you've got 40 guys, or however many guys, and everybody's tolerance to the difference. Tolerate it well, other guys can't, and but ultimately looking away from what they're doing on the pitch answers as to why they're struggling, and probably looking in the wrong spot, I would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from a, I guess from different philosophies' point of view, with the different sporting codes that you've seen, yeah, what have you learned from each sport, and how do you go about applying that to the next sport that you work in? So I guess you're currently in soccer, but how did you, yeah, what have you learned from working in rugby and AFL, and how do you sort of bring that all together, if you do, in your current trade at the A-League club?
Like it all just comes down to the demands of the game. So the injuries are all pretty similar. Obviously the different codes, different injuries, and you might get more hamstrings in one and more shoulders in another. Get are all pretty similar, but what the boys can carry in different codes is exactly the same injury. League player might be able to carry it, AFL player can't. A soccer player might be able to, and a rugby league player can't if it's a upper limb injury. I think when you're working in the rehab space, it's just about looking at and what they've got to do to get back into training, and what the worst case scenarios in there, and then just moulding their rehab based around that, because it is different. It is different. So that's a challenge when you change codes, getting to know what hardest part for certain blokes' positions, and what they're going to be able to do. Not. And each time I've changed code, I've leaned pretty heavily on the performance guys about, what's expected to strain in league, and go, is this bloke expected to carry this, or and they've all been really good at helping out with that. So that's why the injuries are similar, but whether they can carry them in their game and get the job done is different.
Yeah. And for developing physiotherapists that want to work in elite sport, what do you think are some important things to take into account? Perhaps maybe they're undergoing their undergraduate degree or masters. How important is it working in the clinic? How important is it working in community sport or semi-professional sport? Preparing to long-term wanting to work in elite sport.
Yeah, I don't really know the answer to that. Hard, because I've seen it both ways. So I've done it the way where you work in clinic and you see fresh ACL tears every month, and your exposure to is huge. So you get much better at examining them, and if you go, you might see, hopefully, you're not seeing any, right? But you're probably going to see one every 2 years. So is significantly reduced. So, but then there's other benefit in going straight into sport, in that you just see more stuff, you're exploring, you probably pick up how to be a team player, a little bit medical department that sits in the performance model, and have gone pretty much straight into professional sport, and they've been fine as long as they're systematic in their examination of things, because you need to assess. So if someone comes in for something, then if you're a young physio, full assessment of that person, so that you're getting some runs on the board as far as examining lots of different things. But if you're working in community sport, you'll get exposed to mistakes. You'll learn from those mistakes, hopefully, because if you don't, you probably won't make it to. But most people do learn. Everyone makes mistakes, and if you're good at learning from that and self-reflect from that, then working in the clinic and community sport is massively, but it's certainly not essential in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, well said, mate. That's it's good to get that context. Like you said, you've done both, and you can see the benefits to doing both. And it's nice to break it down. I think like that. What about from going back to your career? Like, did you sort of have foresight in thinking I want to expose myself to a range of different elite sporting environments, or is that something that sort of came organically, one step at a time?
To work in different sports. So obviously, I was living in Melbourne, where that's the main sport. So my exposure to that was you're going to get more opportunities in AFL if you're in Melbourne, obviously, because of all the teams. So I got an opportunity to work in Union while I was in Melbourne, which was fantastic across different codes at all. It sort of just happened, I suppose.
Yep.
Yeah, but I'm glad I did. Because you get to see different things, and there's, even though before I said that injuries are the same, like there is some stuff sports that are peculiar to that sport. So it's been first year working in soccer, you see stuff that, and I think the longer you're in the game, the more you realise that you don't know everything, and to keep an open mind about what's possible, and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And from I guess developing your trade as a physio, once you've had some years out under your experience, and you do want to start to understand more the performance side, as well as strength and conditioning methods, what have been some of your favourite ways to sort of develop yourself in that space?
Well, I did the ASCO, which was that was a fantastic course to do. Level 2, I never actually completed my clinical hours because I got a bit lazy. Sorry, guys. I did an Australian Weightlifting Federation course, which was lifting and coaching, which was fantastic. I couldn't walk for about 3 weeks. It was good fun, but that was that's the course side of things, and then sort of hanging with the strength and conditioning guys, and helping and trying to coach, and I think it's physios to become coaches, because it's a big a lot of physios will prescribe exercises, right, and probably does your head in, and other strength and conditioning guys across the country. Guys will do little banded bits and pieces, and that's like, it's probably got 0.5% of someone's program, right? But if you get out on a coach, then that, because it's one thing to do those courses, it's another thing to put it into practice. It's like an ACO level 1, so they've got the basic knowledge, but they don't put it into using their passive modalities and their manual therapy is to do, rather than go, okay, I want to run with this. Mm-hmm. And I say to, you should be able to do the strength and conditioner's job. You should be able to do it. If you're going to work, you do it. Not as good as what they do it, but you should be able to. The guy's sick for it to be able to stand in, right? Of a knowledge base to be able to speak to people about it, and run a gym session about periodization of lifting and training, so that your job of it. And every field has their special niche, and they're good at that. I don't think I'd be a great strength and conditioning coach at that level, but have a good conversation and be able to run a session. So it's putting it into practice to your manual therapy, which is the most important thing to do it. That's the because guys need to progress. You can't the same exercises for 8 weeks, depending on what the problem is, of course. But experience are bad at progressing stuff and then getting rid of the low level stuff and progressing. When I started to think more like an S&C, it's about progression. So once they can do that well, maybe they need to change exercises or start thinking about power or, that's then further on.
Yeah. And that, when you're working in the clinic, did you find that, or would you find if you went back to the clinic that would help you provide a better service for the client, in terms of from a diagnostic point of view, but then being able to help out, and consult? Like, did a lot of them have strength and conditioning coaches in the private sector, or were most of them relying on the physio to give that advice as well around programming?
Yeah, I don't ever. I would give bits of advice on stuff, but most of it was running by extra bits because they're all the time to training and some of them. So I think if you're in a practice where you've got access to lifting equipment on the premises, then that's fantastic. I think you could absolutely. Yeah. But one thing about humans is that you need to coach them through stuff and again and correct form, and humans, I wanted to say inherently lazy, but maybe that's a bit harsh, but things that help them really quickly, especially once their pain starts to get better, right? Then, you still do it, so I'm not doing that anymore. So it's one thing to give someone a program, but there is no good or bad exercises, Jack, as you know, is there. There's just a lot done poorly, right? So giving someone a program and them going away and doing it, who knows? They might get better, they might not. They might do it right, they might do it wrong.
You leave it to chance a bit. Yeah. Yep.
Well, the beauty of the human body is that it's probably going to get better anyway, right? Because it's a machine. So they're probably going to get better. And that's the beauty of it. Right? If they're going to make lasting improvements and gains, then they need to be coached. So if you had some access to it on premises, I think it'd be.
Yep. And before we start to wrap up, mate, is there anything on this topic that we haven't discussed that you'd like to share?
I don't know. Nothing really springs to mind. Like I just want to read. Like I'm not anti-manual therapy, because I sort of upset some people, and I get that, and just so that people know it's my right, and it's the way that I work best, and it fits my, the way that I think, which is not right or wrong. It's just how I am. But to work in sport, you least side of it, because to operate a medical department that's entirely performance is generally doesn't end that well, because there's too much competing interest. And at the end of it all, we're all there just to help them at their best, and to play good football and to be successful on the field. You got to know what to be strong on and strong on.
Yep.
My experience is that the less you're strong on, the better. Everything. You're going to get into a few blues, which isn't.
Yeah, no, well said, mate, and thank you for sharing as well, and being open and honest with it all. No doubt, I know it's been valuable for me, but no doubt for the listeners. From a personal side, in your work life, what makes you angry? What are your pet peeves, either from an industry point of view or practitioner point of view, or perhaps what athletes may or may not do?
I hate it when people are late. It drives. No skill required, right? Don't be late. Poor schedule changes, frequent schedule changes. Um, Apart from that, not much. Not much. So in my time in professional sport, I don't think I've ever woken up and thought, I don't want to go to work. So much makes me angry, but they're probably the biggest things, I would think.
Yeah. And what about your favourite way to spend a day off?
Working in soccer, mate. I've got a new baby. She's almost so most of my spare time's taken up with her, which is fantastic.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate it, Erica. She's going beautifully. I enjoy cooking. I'm a proficient cook off. Don't ask me to ad lib. Don't give me 10 ingredients and ask me to cook something. It'll be a dog's breakfast. But I enjoy that. And like most blokes, I enjoy a beer at the pub.
And what about, we're in March in 2023, so early on in the year. What's on the horizon for you, mate? What are you most excited about?
I'm excited about not wearing on. That's exciting. Got a holiday booked with the kids in the middle of the year who live in Melbourne.
Beautiful.
Charlie, Connor. So we'll all get to young Erica as well, and we'll have a holiday in the middle of the year. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for jumping on, mate, and sharing with us your experiences working in a range of different elite sports, as well as discussing the topic, which I think no doubt interests a lot of people who not only work in elite sport, but also may aspire to. So really, thank you for coming on. Thank you for your time. And for those that want to ask any follow-up questions, mate, what's the best place to get in contact?
I'll give you. Do you want an email address? Is that the best?
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with. We can add it in the show notes.
Yep, fine. I'll give you my email. Any questions or queries that they want. That's no, Jack. I really appreciate the chance to speak to you, and I've heard a lot about you and about your business and your podcast, and I hope the season at Melbourne goes well.
Thank you, and likewise, mate. Yeah, hopefully it's the rest of the season's successful one, and you enjoy that holiday, mate, with the fam.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome, and thank you for everyone that's tuned in. If you tuned in halfway through, make sure to listen to the very start. This will live on our YouTube channel, and we'll post it on our podcast, Spotify, and iTunes in the next coming weeks. Our next live chat is with Claudio Altieri. That will be next Tuesday, the 7th of March at 10:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. So I'll see you guys then.